Hello, chaps and chapesses. As I'm sure you're very much all aware, it's me again, John Dating Sim, and I apologize terribly for the wait, but today we're going to be going through my review and story analysis for Dispatch Episode 4. You all know what to expect by now, so get comfortable, because I have a lot to say. Here's the summary. Episode 4 takes Dispatch in a little bit of a weird direction, in my opinion. We've known since episode 1 that there was always going to be a significant romantic subplot one way or another, but I didn't expect it to take up so much of this episode's runtime. The pacing of the wider plot really stalls out here, sacrificed on the altar of a very basic and kind of unimpressive dating sim. Again, there's a lot of essentially pointless decisions that make absolutely no difference to the story at large, but at least those are balanced by two very significant decisions that we are given. 1, who we want to add as a new member to the Z team, and 2, who we want to go on a date with. We get a lot of development from some side characters, namely Invisagal, Blonde Blazer, and Phenomenan, but the actual central plot surrounding Robert and Mechaman is still very much left to the wayside in favor of a keenly character-driven story. Overall, I would say that the game is improving, but to be honest, whilst so much of the playtime for this episode is made up of the shitty Dispatch minigame, I really can't get over the fact that I can't recommend Dispatch. Go and watch somebody else play it, watch this video. I wouldn't bother buying it. I genuinely wouldn't. Anyway, having said that, let's get over into the main review. Okay, so I straight up cannot show you absolutely anything of like the first 2 minutes of episode 4 because it's just straight pornography. Invisagal is having a goddamn great time with a beshadowed figure, and her powers are going nuts, phasing in and out of visibility, and I actually really like it when stories like this take sex with superpowers seriously. Like that one time that Superman and Wonder Woman killed thousands of people by literally banging out tidal waves and earthquakes. Or when you get your first flame atronac and finally get your hands on a potion of extreme fire resistance. If you know what I mean. As long as it isn't like blatant gooner bait or anything properly distasteful, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with including explicitly sexual content in a story like this that's very clearly exclusively meant for adults. My immediate question, of course, is whether or not you'd be able to see the dick of whoever she's having sex with through her, or whether that would work in the same way as it evidently does with her like own internal organs and stuff. It's not clear. See what I did there? But would you believe it? It's only the world's sexiest man, Robert fucking Robertson III. What? Excuse me? Have I missed something? Oh, no, I'm only joking. It's just Invisagal having a sex dream about Robert. And we've all been there, right? Random sex dream about a friend or a coworker. It happens. And as we all have, Vizzy laughs about how fucked she is and buries her head in her pillows. Robert sits back in his chair, apparently having fallen asleep reading what seems to be some sort of motivational or productivity-boosting self-help book titled Outcome Over Output. To me, the implication here is clearly that he was up all night, taking his work home with him as he always has, trying to think of new ways to get through to the Z team and to motivate and inspire them into climbing up the ranks. Robert takes us through his highly diligent morning routine, American Psycho style, and what's becoming increasingly apparent about Robert is that he is clearly so depressed. He is not a happy bunny. He doesn't take very good care of himself, which makes his absolutely unwavering dedication to helping other people even more impressive. This scene in the lift is so funny. What a great idea of taking the idea of working in an office for superheroes so seriously, and actually sitting down and thinking about what it would be like at every single stage of that process. And you're totally right. It would make for some really weird fucking lift interactions. Although, I have to say that every time we've seen the SDN building before, it didn't look like it was tall enough to actually accommodate a lift. Whatever. We get a glance of Blazer in the middle of a phone call as we're making our way to our desk, and it's clear that Robert really does have some feelings for her. And why wouldn't he? She's beautiful, intelligent, funny, and they get along so well. So it's all going great for Robert this morning. That is, until he opens his PC and about 20 blaringly loud porn ads all start screaming out in the middle of his office. Acting fast, Robert locks the fuck in and hits the full Madara Uchiha eye flicker as he absolutely executes each and every one of these pop-ups with speed, precision, and raw killing power not seen in the world since the passing of the White Death in 2002. Fun fact about this, if you're playing the censored mode of the game, then this isn't actually a bunch of porn pop-up ads, but it's this random, bird screeching thing. I'm not exactly sure what it is supposed to be, but yeah, it's not as good. It doesn't land as well, to be honest, but it's a nice inclusion for the more sensitive among us. Then, Robert hears the laughter of Malevola, Flambe, and Punch Up, the world's strongest small man giving him a nasty look, as Chase reminds us that he and Coupe used to date, and now we'll probably have to deal with him being a tiny prick. Incidentally, if we had fired Sonar instead of Coupe, then it's Malevola who ends up pissed off at us, because apparently the two were close. And we did know that Malevola was Sonar's Narcotics Anonymous sponsor, so that tracks. We talk to Chase about the team briefly until we spot Invisagal staring us down from the other side of the office. She and Chase have a little spat, and she drops this line about, "Don't you have some dementia to onset?" And holy shit, what a fucking burn. My God, she's cooking. Chase lets us know that Blazer wants to fill an empty slot on the team with either Waterboy or Phenomenan. Robert quite rightly asks if he's missing something here, because Phenomenan is a super strong, indestructible alien who can casually break into supersonic flight on a whim, and Waterboy pukes water, with all the pathetic violence of me the morning after 13 beers dinner. And I really like the fact that whilst Robert clearly likes Waterboy and wants to support him, as well as having plenty of reason to dislike Phenomenan, there's no immediate doubt in his mind that he's going to do what's best for the team and for the city rather than just play favorites. But it's not that simple. We turn onto the TV and turn it over to the news, and what we see we simply cannot comprehend. We see that Phenomenan is holding up traffic by sad man walking down the middle of the motorway, evidently enormously depressed and apparently tragically impassable, despite the fact that he's only taking up one lane and the other two are completely clear. It appears he's not really taking the breakup very well, and sweet Jesus if that isn't relatable to all of us. Now, Waterboy comes to clean the TV with a mop, which is just so funny. Why the fuck did he decide to do it at all? You don't mop TVs, my poor baby boy. And secondly, why did he decide to do it right now, when literally everybody in the office is very clearly watching breaking news, and he's getting harassed by all these office workers and dispatchers, and he doesn't really have any defense because he knows that he's the one that fucked it up? Oh, he just can't get a break, man. Now, I totally see what the game is doing in trying to set up Phenomenan and Waterboy as equally inept or damaged by balancing out this enormous power gap with the profound emotional instability that Phenomenan is currently suffering. But it still feels a little bit contrived and overly generous to Waterboy. Chase makes a great point that, of course, Robert's whole philosophy is that it's about the person and not the powers. But the problem here is that Waterboy has both power and personality problems. It's not just his powers that are the problem. He's just not very well suited to being a hero. He lacks confidence, self-awareness, decisiveness. He has no ability to reassure people or coordinate or communicate with other heroes. If he was like Robert, professional, level-headed, tactical, then despite his shitty powers, that wouldn't have even been a question. I'm taking Waterboy 10 out of 10 times. Then in comes one of the craziest jump scares I've ever seen in my life. We go straight to the photocopier, which is currently copying pictures of Robert's graffitied face in between some man's yawning arsehole, which, funnily enough, I didn't see coming. But here we are again, back in the cockpit of the Mechaman suit, which is looking a hell of a lot better than it used to, at least in the sense that it can fucking move now. We pop in what must be our new prototype Astral Pulse and begin to test what we learn is the 7th iteration of this technology. Just saying, it would have been nice to know what kind of time scale we've been working on thus far. Have we been working at SDN for a week, a couple of months? How long has it taken us to get to 7 test versions of a Protopulse? Because as far as I can tell, this is like our 2nd or 3rd day working here. And not that I'm doubting Royd's ability to get shit done, but it seems like it's been an awfully short amount of time to have made such drastic progress on the Mechaman suit. Regardless, We boot up the suit and all seems to be going well. The power source seems to hold through simple locomotive exercises and through some more complicated ones. I think it's really impressive how fluid and human-like Robert is directing these movements, considering that we see that Mechaman is controlled by a dual joystick system of some description. And yes, I'm digging way too much into this, but I really like the idea that if you put anybody else inside the Mechaman suit, they would just have no fucking idea how to drive the thing at all. Royd gets increasingly giddy as the test goes on, and we can perform a number of exciting maneuvers to really push the limits of the new power source. Unfortunately, whilst things are looking great at first, it doesn't take long before the suit is overloaded and shuts down. And seeing this unstable, semi-nuclear power source crackling and bursting literally 6 inches away from Robert's face makes me wonder why you would have the power source completely exposed directly in the pilot's face. In the aftermath of this failed test, Robert finds some schematics in the SDN engineering bay, and Royd explains that it's company policy at SDN to reverse engineer and then reapply technology confiscated from supervillains. Apparently, this entire process is overseen by Royd personally, which seems pretty insane just to have one guy dealing with a presumably vast amount of extremely advanced and dangerous technology. Okay, tinfoil hat time. Maybe Royd is I've actually genuinely forgotten the main villain's name because nobody's actually spoken about him since episode 1 at all. It's the fucking the Shade, the Spectre, the Shroud. That's oh god, the Shroud. Maybe he is the Shroud. You know, it would work, right? I mean, I fundamentally don't believe the origin story that we were given in episode 1, because if you have a masked villain, you are obligated to make that villain's reveal something unexpected and somebody that the hero's known all along. It's just part of the parcel. So Invisagal appears and she's getting her money's worth from her front row ticket to examine Robert Robertson's rock hard ass. She's not even trying to be subtle about it. Robert immediately asks if she's checking him out, and she just does not reply to that question at all, carrying out her assessment with a discerning eye. Trying in her way to make people uncomfortable, she asks whether or not Robert has ever had a wank in the Mechaman suit, which more than anything is a very clever way for her to walk this line between being overtly sexual and still being annoying and bratty and trying to take Robert down a peg. My poor sweet soul Royd, who is very pure and kind and earnest, is unfortunately stuck in the crossfire between the two most nonchalantly sardonic, casually abrasive people in the world, and he does not know what to do about it. The incredibly weird sexual tension between these two is so powerful. Credit where credit's due to the writers and the animators. Everybody here did such a great job at writing this and setting the just horrendous, combative, lustful, prideful, dom subtone thing that's going on here. They end up in this standoff where Invisagal is trying to break down the walls of their professional relationship, and Robert is trying his best to stay in control and stay strictly professional. Unfortunately, Invisagal has actually played a blinder here because Blazer actually sent her to get us half an hour ago, so we have to go skedaddling along, and she wins this particular staring contest. So we accidentally barge in on Blazer while she's in the middle of getting changed in this beautiful blue dress. We apologize and try to retreat, but instead Blazer invites us in and asks Robert to zip her up. And hilariously, Robert directly comments on the fact that women seem to be throwing themselves at him today. But thankfully, he manages a nat 20 deception check and ends up without anything being super awkward. Blazer explains that she's going to this gala tonight and asks us how the dress looks. In my opinion, the dress is perfect, apart from the very small flash of her left nipple. I actually can't believe that this is one of the dialogue options that we have in this fucking episode. Like, when we get to the end credits, spoilers, this decision is going to be held up in front of us as if it had any impact on the story whatsoever. It's embarrassing. Why the fuck is it here? It's so insignificant. It's nothing. It's less than nothing. It's outrageous and frustrating and audacious. But we'll get to that. I tried to be direct, yet not super crass about the whole thing and just tell her that there's a little bit of tightness going on in the chest, which she responds to about as well as she can given the situation. With that, minor wardrobe malfunction taken care of, she asks us again how she looks, and I think all of these options, yet again, are fucking pointless, because they all basically do the same thing. Even if you decide that you want to try and poke fun at her or be blatantly mean, she takes it in the right way, because obviously she does. Because this game has you so locked in on its predetermined rails that you can't make any mistakes or damage your relationship with any characters in any way whatsoever. We also learn that Blazer was supposed to be going to this gala with Phenomenan, but she can't anymore, A, on account of the fact that they broke up, and B, on account of the fact that he's been fired, and seems to be taking this about as well as anybody could be, by figuratively and literally crashing out on some poor bastard's car out in the car park. Blazer asks us to go and talk to Phenomenan and essentially try and get him to piss off. We ask why, and Blazer, very accurately in my opinion, points out that Robert Robertson III should be a presidential speechwriter. He's like the good guy version of Joseph Goebbels, for Christ's sake. Man has plus 10 persuasion and the silver tongue feature on top. He can't roll below a 20 on his persuasion. Also, side quest, get Phenomenan to stop sending edible arrangements made entirely out of melon. So Robert goes out to have a chat with the second most depressed superhero of all time, after none other than Mechaman himself, of course. We ask him how he's doing, and surprisingly, he's very open and displays a shocking lack of pride considering how we saw him earlier. I think this reinforces the point that I made when we met him at the end of episode 2. He was genuinely not trying to be dismissive or condescending towards us. He was just earnestly confused about the limitations of humans. So we begin this little heart-to-heart with Phenomenan, with him saying that he's been thinking about flying into the sun, absorbing all of its energy, and casting the entire planet into infinite darkness just so that he wouldn't have to see blonde Blazer again. And holy shit, the idea of an evil Superman has been done so many times, but the idea of an utterly depressed Superman who just loses all respect for the value of life is arguably so much scarier. You cannot argue with somebody who is completely apathetic towards the death of billions. That is, of course, unless you're Robert Robertson III. He opens up to Phenomenan about the last time he went through a breakup and got blackout drunk on mezcal, woke up in an empty void and assumed that he had died and become a zombie. Turns out he collapsed in a urinal and somebody threw him in a bin. What an absolute fucking champion, by the way. My last breakup, I very impressively managed to spend 4 full weeks without a single conscious second of sobriety. Thank you very much. I'll take my Oscar now. And then he has an idea. Rocketing up at phenomenal speeds, Phenomenan asks if there might be somebody else in the equation, an obstacle that he can get rid of. I think you'd have to be pretty fucking bold at this point to say to Phenomenan that actually, yeah, your bird fancies me. But of course, regardless of what you say to him, it ends up in the same place, because of course it does, and this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody anymore. Regardless of what you choose, Robert explains that Blazer's feelings aren't a problem for Phenomenan to solve, but a reality that he's going to have to learn to content himself with. Blazer is capable of making her own choices, and she doesn't need to be saved from them. Also, I really hate this continued insistence that Phenomenan isn't a person. He's a very different kind of person, and he's obviously not human as far as we can tell, but there's absolutely no reason to suggest that he's not a person. He says that he's not a person, he just resembles one anatomically, and that's categorically wrong. The word he's looking for here is human, not person. He absolutely is a person. He has agency and free will and intelligence and emotions and every other thing that would make any other thing a person. I think it's just a hang-up maybe on the writing staff's part that they don't really seem to understand the philosophical implication of the word person when weighed against the biological categorization of human. And if this were actually addressed in this piece of dialogue, if Robert were to explain to Phenomenan that he's using those words incorrectly as a non-native speaker, then that could have been a super interesting way to bolster his sense of self-worth and dignity, letting him know that he is a person and that he's more than what he can do for other people. We close out by specifically asking for Phenomenan to stop sending melon arrangement, and he takes it very well, all credit due to him. I think it's so funny that Robert has become very much aware of how literally Phenomenan takes a lot of things because he doesn't understand the nuances of human communication. So when he's like, oh, yeah, anytime. And then immediately amends himself to be like, oh, well, no, actually, not anytime at all, please. Very infrequently at best. It's very funny. Very good writing. And just banger after banger, as it turns out that Phenomenan has lodged several shards of glass directly into Robert's chest. This is so funny, and again, a great example of what happens when you take superheroes and their ludicrous speed feats seriously. Although I will say that looking back, there's absolutely no indication that this happens graphically, which is a little bit disappointing. It would have been nice that if, on looking back, you could have actually seen, even if just for the briefest of moments, that the glass was actually embedding itself in Robert's chest. And I mean, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but it would have been nice. Also, again, another demonstration of Robert Robertson III being the baddest motherfucker alive. What do you mean he didn't even notice getting fucking shrapnel blasted at point blank range? The man is a pinnacle of not giving a fuck. So Phenomenan goes to do his superhero blast off into the sky, but just sort of moans like a sad puppy and slopes away. Oh, it's very funny. It's very, very funny. I like Phenomenan a lot. I think he's a great character. And his development has really taken a nice direction that could have so easily just been twisted into another boring, evil Superman. They did very, very well here. Now, back to woof, 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 woof. God, he's so fucking hot! Vizzy doesn't miss an opportunity to see her man with his top off, so sneaks into the loo with him to, oh my goodness gracious me, she is the bravest person who has ever lived. She directly confesses to a colleague that she had a sex dream about him. You know what? Maybe invisibility isn't her superpower whatsoever. It's actually her total disregard for any apparent shame or embarrassment. She could be a goddamn Green Lantern. Holy shit. So obviously, again, you can ostensibly take this conversation in a number of ways, but they all end up in the same place. There's no option here to say that this is unprofessional, that we shouldn't be talking about this, or to say that we already have feelings for Blazer, or, to not get her hopes up and to focus on her job. The only three choices that we get are the same brand of jokey, sardonic flirting, which is fucking stupid. Give us the choice to flirt or not to flirt, not on how we want to flirt. She tells us that she's been imagining actually being with Robert, that she's feeling out what their life together might look like, how it might feel. And my God, this woman is down so bad in the middle of this incredibly tense, charged moment where you're like, will they? Won't they? They're so close. They're nearly touching. Waterboy decides to absolutely rip ass on the shitter, nary 2 fucking feet away. Now, I know I don't include the audio in these videos, but on this occasion, I'll make an exception. Listen to this.
And you chose to be here.
For a man who's supposed to make things moist, there is nothing smooth or easy about the utter destruction that poor boy is wreaking on those toilets. And he's so feeble and pathetic in his attempts to apologize, but Robert just lets him know that that's all right, Waterboy. You're just doing what you need to do. Toilets are for shitting in and for picking glass out of your chest. And her screaming at Waterboy that he ruined this for her and him immediately agreeing and apologizing. Like, Christ, this episode is so funny. Jumping straight from one frothing brown liquid to another, we stare dejectedly into our coffee and give little fat boy beef a good piece of ham. Now, with that, we jump back into the boring as fuck dispatching section of the game. And jumping back into the timeline of what I'm calling my canonical playthrough, we fired Coupe, so we're already one hero down. And halfway through, Punch Up, as Coupe's on-again, off-again X, also decides to step down and piss off. If it's Sonar that we decided to fire, then it's actually Malevola who ends up ditching halfway through, and we're left with a bit of a skeleton crew to run the rest of the shift with. But again, who gives a fuck? This is boring. It detracts from the main story more than anything else. It's padding out the game. It doesn't add anything. I don't care for it. I could not care less about it at all. So skipping this pointless filler shit, we end up back in the break room with a bar of horrendous-looking American chocolate whilst Waterboy cleans out the fridge. Luckily for him, he's the only one that seems to be benefiting from Phenomenan's grief melon obsession. Unluckily for him, it seems that he's thrown out Flambe's dinner. I understand Flambe's frustration here. If somebody threw out my dinner in the middle of the workday, I would be fucking fuming. And Waterboy's defense, I guess, is that sometimes he doesn't read things, which is a pretty fucking dog shit excuse in any case. So Waterboy tries to fish the noodles back out of the bin, and Flambe ends up slapping them back in his face, causing a giant mess and mocking his stuttering, which just goes too far. Yes, it's a stupid fucking thing for Waterboy to do, but there's no need to douse the guy in fucking bin noodles. That's crazy. So we intervene like the good team captain we are, telling Flambe to cool the fuck off and leave Waterboy alone. I really do not understand his reaction to being called out about this. He's like, "Oh, are you gonna snitch on me?" And I'm like, "What do you mean snitch? Robert is your boss, and he is deciding who gets cut or not from the team. You're already caught. You already snitched on yourself, you stupid bitch." Again, we get a choice that isn't a choice, and doesn't fucking mean anything, when we are offered to throw either spaghetti or a protein shake at him. And the fact that there's not a third option here in which we don't throw anything is a stupid fucking massive oversight, and it's incredibly lazy from these devs that they literally don't give a shit anymore and don't even give you enough choice not to escalate this situation. We throw whatever we want to throw at him, and he nearly lights our arse up with his fire powers, but then Blazer steps in and really saves Robert's goose from being well and thoroughly cooked. If we throw the spaghetti, then Blazer has this completely insane alien moment where she asks Flambe if he ate her lunch. Now, I don't know if Blonde Blazer has ever seen anybody eat anything ever, but that's evidently not what happened here because it's on his fucking head. I have genuinely no idea what they were thinking writing this line for her, and it's just the latest in a series of genuinely baffling writing decisions in this game as a whole. Credit where credit's due, it's very, very funny when Blazer turns Flambe into her bitch and sends him out to get her a BLT, and he has to just sit there seething about it. All things considered, he took it remarkably well for somebody who very clearly has defined anger issues. These Phoenix team members really need this job, holy shit. Also, her slipping on the floor is actually incredibly funny. I don't know why, it just feels so authentic. It's like one of those moments that you wouldn't write into a story most of the time because it's totally superfluous and doesn't really add anything. But in adding nothing, it adds so much to the scene, and the voice acting is great of her slipping up and catching herself mid-sentence. So, here comes one of the important decisions we get to make in this episode. Who do we want to add to the team? Depressed knockoff Superman or mildly moist boy? I'm sorry, that was mean. In what I'm considering my main playthrough, I went with what I think is the obvious decision, which is Phenomenan. Look, you will never be able to convince me that Waterboy is the right person for this job. As I said before, even if it was just a question of personality, Phenomenan is still a far better hero than Waterboy. He has more experience, more confidence, and more capacity to do good in the city. Waterboy is just not cut out for any kind of stressful environment whatsoever. And ultimately, Waterboy can continue what he's doing right now without really causing any problems. But Phenomenan needs something to do, desperately. And this is exactly what Robert says and exactly what Blazer agrees with. Now, this next scene is where we interact with the person that we chose to join the team. So first up, we're going to do the Phenomenan scene, and then we'll be taking a look at Waterboy afterwards. So we head to the shower in the middle of the work day. Is this something that happens in the US? Am I missing something about working for a big company? Because this seems like a fucking school. Like it has a gym and a locker room and showers, and I just don't understand at all. This is completely alien to me. I've only ever worked in bars and in garages, and we didn't have this shit. All we had were alcoholics and... Well, no, it was actually just alcoholics in both of them. And you know what? I'll drink to that. So we come out of the shower and get jump scared by Phenomenan, who managed to silently sneak up on us by merit of the fact that he's floating a few inches off the floor. That's a pretty cool trick, and also evidently what my mother thinks I do whenever I enter a room in a normal human way, making a normal human amount of noise, and she turns around as if I've snuck in the window like a ninja and screams at me. Phenomenan asks us for a word and, very compassionately suggests that he himself get naked in order to make Robert feel more comfortable. Robert tries to tell him that him being picked for the Z team was no big deal, but Phenomenan just reaches across and grabs his tiny little angry depressed twink up in his arms and gives him what must be one of the most bone-crushing hugs that a person has ever experienced, akin to the grip that cognitive dissonance has on Trump supporters. And Robert's strained, haggard voice telling him that, "Oh, don't worry, you're a legend," is so good. Oh my god, free Robert Bum. God, I hope Invisagal's here to see this, because it's everything she ever wanted, and I feel bad for having to experience this without her. The important thing is that once again, for the second time in the same day, Robert has newly opened chest wounds. Now, if we decide that we want to take Waterboy, then we learn an incredibly important piece of information, that Waterboy is actually fully aware that we are Mechaman. Now, I guess the implication here is that Waterboy simply put 2 and 2 together. He saw Mechaman go into the office and then met Robert for the first time the same day. But it still would have been nice if they expounded a little bit more about how he figured that out, considering that none of the other Z-teamers who have actually met him as Mechaman, like Flambe, Coupe, and Punch-Up, still haven't figured it out. So once again, we end up in this shared shower room, although for some reason this time it's pretty packed. I don't really know why it's busy this time and wasn't the other time, but whatever. So here's our boy, our awkward little man, getting wetter than wet in a wetsuit in a shower, trying to get these fucking noodles off of him. Robert tells him that he's definitely going to clog the sink, and Waterboy says, "Oh, don't worry about it, I've got a plan," and just starts waffle stomping down the noodles into the drain, because that will definitely solve the problem. And who does Robert Robertson think he is, pulling this slutty little cross-legged lean onto this side bit here? Absolute whore behavior. Waterboy thanks us for picking him for the team, and lets us know that he's really jizzed to be working with us. And Robert is so kind and patient with Waterboy to let him get away with this, because I think if it was anybody else, he would verbally crucify them for that. But he has a soft spot for Waterboy, because he knows that he's trying his best. And this line that he's reasonably optimistic that he deserves it is so good. It's so difficult sometimes for me to do these reviews, because when they get it right in Dispatch, holy shit, they get it right. It's so good when it's good. And then when it flops so hard, that's when I come down so hard on this game, because it had so much more potential to be actually incredible and genre-defining, and it just throws all this goodwill away on so many occasions by not taking its own premise as a choose-your-own-adventure game seriously, and giving the player choices that just do not matter. Thus far, we've had literally 2 significant choices in the game, and that's who did we want to sack and who did we want to hire. And more than 4 hours and halfway into the game right now, that is completely unacceptable. The only thing I'm going to say about the rest of the dispatch, because I don't like talking about it, is that I really appreciate the fact that they gave Phenomenan and Waterboy lore-accurate stats that accurately reflect their abilities. I was really worried that choosing Phenomenan, they were going to say that his depression nerfed him and that he wasn't going to be as strong as he should be. You know, that sort of beat the main boss, get to play them, and now they're weak as fuck trope. And he becomes a very useful solo hero because he's got a good spread of stats and starts with flight, which reduces travel time. This, compared to Waterboy, who is conversely dogshit and cannot possibly be sent to do anything on his own. We don't really learn much of interest about either of them during this dispatch section, but the important takeaway is that the rest of the team aren't happy with the inclusion either way. So, we finish up this shift exhausted at having to deal with the childish bickering of the Z team, and Chase, being his classically grumpy and impish self, calling out both Phenomenan or Waterboy with equal venom. Although, you really can't argue that Waterboy kind of is a wet baby bitch boy. But you can't be mad at him because he's so cute and nice. Look at him. I love you, kid, on the way out. What a star. Robert pulls out a picture of him with his father, and to be honest, I still don't really know how I feel about the 2D anime style clashing with the 3D cel-shaded style, but I guess it doesn't matter. What matters is that Robert Robertson II is just as much of a hunk. My God, what are they doing in this family? What are they feeding these men? What do you do in the Robertson clan that produces such studs? We clock out for the day and take Beef downstairs with us to go and play some fetch. But you must remember that Beef is his own man and his own champion. He's not interested in these pathetic little games. He's an inquisitive soul, an explorer, a scholar, and a gentleman, and he goes where he wants to go. And he ends up discovering something very interesting. We find Phenomenan obsessing over old tapes of him and Blazer fighting crime together. And oh, Jesus, is that relatable. You know, we've all been caught now and again scrolling through the old conversations between us and an ex. Also, Blazer can apparently shoot energy beams, which is cool. It would be nice to have some exploration by now of what most of the heroes' powers actually are and where they come from, but I'm sure that would cost money and time and writing effort, so way beyond what we've come to expect so far. Phenomenan tells us that he remembers a time that Blazer and him were eating breakfast at the rim of an active volcano, which is pretty cute and romantic in theory, but I'm fairly sure that volcanoes fucking stink to high heaven because of all the sulfur in them. I think they smell like shit and eggs, so even if it weren't uncomfortably hot, I still think it wouldn't be great. Phenomenan talks about him and Blazer making love, and just as Robert is jumping in like, dude, I don't need to hear your fucking sex stories, Phenomenan reveals that him and Blazer never had sex because his alien space cock is not compatible with human genitals. I think there's something really interesting about Phenomenan as a portrayal of masculinity here. Now, I don't want to go down a huge gender theory literary tangent, but I will say that I think the majority of what masculinity has been traditionally thought of over the last however many hundreds of years essentially boils down to capability and independence. Like being big and strong and not needing to take directions and not needing to get a guy in to fix the plumbing. These are all individual assessments of ability that shows that a man can provide for himself and for others without relying on other people. So in episode 1, where we see Phenomenan as this immensely masculine, physically overpowering figure who can do a lot of things that we can't, like flying, he is in a position of strength. But here, he's very much the opposite, because he's been entirely emasculated by losing all control both of himself and indeed for losing the sexual aspect of his identity entirely. It'll be really interesting for me to see where they take this character moving forward. Anyway, Robert for a moment forgets that Phenomenan doesn't do sarcasm, and he's like, oh, that's cool, your dick doesn't work. And he looks up so earnestly sad like, why would that be cool? Phenomenan goes on to tell us that Blazer essentially was the only thing in his life that he cared about. And there's an interesting parallel here, I think, between Phenomenan and his relationship with Blazer and Robert with his relationship with the Mechaman suit. The two of them together have both built their entire identity around what they can do for others, rather than finding purpose in their sense of self. And that's why I think Robert feels a kind of kinship with Phenomenan, rather than being intimidated and defensive and insecure with him. So Robert hits Phenomenan with a goddamn logic bomb by saying that there's no way of knowing that he's only passionate about Blazer until he's exhausted literally every other option, and that the search itself for meaning is something worth being passionate about. It seems like this advice really resonates with Phenomenan, so in order to thank us, he decides that he's going to make love to us here and now. Wait, what? Oh, okay, I see. He even goes so far as to say that he's going to avoid squeezing us like a lemon. Character development. Now, if we decided instead that we wanted Waterboy to join the team, Beef uncovers him in a janitor's closet. He's having a hard time because the team repeatedly made fun of his stutter throughout the dispatch and told him that he's useless and pathetic and he has no place being there. And he's feeling sad about it, as one can imagine. And I just cannot believe it. I genuinely cannot believe it. But Robert Robertson has become an even greater therapist than he was previously, because he's given this single most panacea universal cure for any and all possible ailments. Here, hold a beef. And just look at how much holding a beef immediately helps him. Oh, beef. I love beef so much. I'm actually getting quite emotional about how much I love beef. Like, I actually might cry a little bit. So we pull up a bucket and get straight to work, blatantly psychoanalyzing Waterboy to his face, having known him for like 2 days. And listen, I would never second guess Robert Robertson III, but I'm fairly sure that you need a medical degree to do this ethically. But hey, like I said, I'm not going to question my captain. See where that got Eurylochus? Because now I think about it, Robert is totally correct when he says that he doesn't think Waterboy has a stutter at all. It's not that he repeats sounds or words, it's that he constantly changes what it is he's about to say mid-sentence. He second guesses everything constantly, and he can't stay committed to one idea because he's too scared that it's the wrong thing to say. We tell him as much, and holy shit, this man looks at us like we just handed him the key to understanding the secrets of the universe. We ask him what he thinks he has to worry about from the Z team of all people. I mean, what's the worst thing that could go wrong with them? And even just as this idea hits him for the first time, you can really see that Waterboy is trying his best to believe it. And he does stutter less, even from the very first moment. He's obviously scared about being called useless, about failing in his dream to become a superhero. And I think especially worried about being a worse superhero than ex-supervillains. I mean, that is a tough cross to bear for a genuinely nice guy who has to watch all of these assholes around him live the life that he's always aspired to but never been able to reach. And Robert Robertson quite rightly tells him, well, who gives a fuck about what those losers think? They're going to be assholes regardless if you were good or not, which we as the player know to be true because they gave Phenomenan of all people a fucking hard time. So it doesn't matter. It's nothing to do with Waterboy himself. They're all just fucking reject losers, so who cares what they think? But just as we're about to leave for the day, we notice that there's still a feed running through our dispatch computer, and we pop on our headphones to see that Invisagal is out at the cinema. Oh my god, the sexy banter between the two of them here is just ludicrous. It's so intense. It's so funny. I actually love them. They have this joke about Robert not pegging her for a rom-com fan, and she says, well, Robert, I don't think you should be pegging me for anything. That's highly unprofessional, which is just inspired. It's low-hanging fruit, I guess, but I don't mind. There's nothing wrong with the guilty pleasure pegging joke now and again. We ask her to let us know how the film is once she's seen it, and she lets us know that there's still 20 minutes before it even starts. And you may be thinking that that sounds like an invitation to a date, and that's because that's exactly what it McFucking is. Not only that, she specifically tells us that she goes solo to these things because she feels bad asking other people to pay when she's just going to sneak in. But the problem with this is that she can never bring any snacks. And say what you will, a goth baddie alone in the cinema in need of snacks. Who could possibly resolve this most heinous and egregious situation? But oh my god, if it isn't Blonde Blazer from the top rope with the people's elbow straight into the you-up DMs. It's unbelievable stuff, folks. So chaps and chapesses, we have overwhelmingly the most important decision we've ever faced in this game so far. Who the fuck are we going to go on a date with tonight? Oh, it's difficult. It's terrifying. And honestly, I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I think there's an argument to be made either way. I think both ladies have a lot to offer, and I think Robert has a lot to offer. But ultimately, I'm going with Invisagal. Oh my god, I actually love the pair of them. Invisagal joking that it's illegal for Robert to be watching, and he's like, no, actually, it's illegal for you to be recording, and then asks her for a recap of the first film. She begins to be a presumably extensive recap, whilst we set off into the night. And by the time we show up with chocolate and popcorn and some Coke, we scared the shit out of Invisagal. And it's so beautiful the way they animated her face here, because she genuinely looks like she cannot possibly comprehend what is currently happening. It goes beyond simple shock, beyond surprise. It's a full-on computational meltdown as she realizes that she's been talking to herself this entire time. Let me break this down for you guys, because this is actually a moment of genuinely brilliant writing, okay? Because here, Robert is able to push the boundaries of their relationship without the confines of the workplace. He doesn't have to be her boss, doesn't have to be the one constantly reeling her in, or set a good example, or take the high road every time. He totally fucking pranks her. He makes her give him an entire film summary and doesn't listen to any of it. It's so good. And moreover, he proves beyond all possible shadow of a doubt that he does not give a fuck about this film. This is the sequel to a film he's never seen, and he totally just aired the entire recap that she gave him. This proves that he doesn't give a fuck about the film. He just wants to spend time with her regardless of what it is they're doing. God, it's so good! So Invisagal asks if they're friends now, and this need for her to seek reassurance under the guise of taking the piss out of him is so lovely for her character. I decide that Robert is going to be the bitchy one for once, and he's going to fully let his hair down and be like, well, do you want to be? She says she hasn't decided. And Robert's like, oh, well, you should have told me that before I spent £1 billion on a big bucket of popcorn. She says, I'm not going to let you fuck me just because you bought some popcorn. And the way he just laughs in her face and very blanketly asks her, can you just be normal for once? Is so great. He's just saying, for once, can you not actively try and make this situation awkward because you like reveling in other people's discomfort? Just be normal. You wouldn't normally say that to a normal person in a normal conversation. Just calm down. Stop being weird. Oh my god, they both try talking at the same time, and they're leaning into each other, and her wide eyes when she sees that they're looking into each other's eyes. Oh my god, I was screaming and kicking my feet throughout this entire thing. It's so good. It's actually so good. Like, I've ripped this game a lot, But this is 10 out of 10, no notes, perfect execution. Like, a part of me thinks that this should have been the whole fucking game. It should have been dedicated to being a romantic comedy rather than this big superhero story about Mechaman that they've literally ignored since episode 1. Invisagal says that this is nice, and Robert asks if she wants some Sour Patch Kids. And she loves Sour Patch Kids. And I didn't realize this, but if you zoom in onto the Sour Patch Kids, it says Sour Pack Kids. So I don't know if they just couldn't get the licensing for this or whatever, but, blatant product placement is as blatant product placement does. And oh my god, what a fantastic date this is for the two of them. I know I said it literally a few seconds ago, but honestly, 10 out of 10, no notes. Nothing but squealing glee out of me at this point, guys, I have to tell you. But let's take a look at an alternate future, where instead we decided that we wanted to have dinner with Blonde Blazer. If we turn down Invisagal, you see this really heart-shattering moment where she sort of stumbles over what she wants to say, and she looks genuinely so upset and downtrodden. This scene works best if you also chose Waterboy this episode, because having this moment just after we helped Waterboy with his speech condition, and then seeing Invisagal fall into that same thing where she lacks confidence and can't decide how she wants to say what she wants to say, is a really, really tragically beautiful mirror. So we head up to this little courtyard and Blazer is there again in this beautiful dress, but she stops us as we approach because she has something to tell us. She's been keeping a secret. This is not her true form. And let me tell you, damn, what a reveal. That's a super cool concept to throw in here. Let's really test the limits of what kind of freakiness Robert is prepared to get into. She starts to explain, but decides that it's better just to rip the plaster off. She tells us to temper our expectations, and Robert watches on confused as she removes her bejeweled necklace and begins floating into the air, suffused with this radiating celestial energy like the solar flares of a golden supernova. And there she is. Let me tell you something, chaps and chapesses. Your boy loves a brunette. I was barking and hollering. I nearly threw my laptop out of the window the first time I saw this scene because I just thought she couldn't get any more perfect, any more beautiful. And she turns around and she's actually a siren, a figure of legend and myth. She is transcendentally beautiful. Sweet Jesus Christ on the cross. And Robert just has to laugh because he, and I think all of us, assumed that this was going to end up way worse for him than it actually did. Blazer asks him if he's disappointed, and Robert is completely baffled. Like, are you kidding? Am I kidding? What's happening right now? She keeps asking if he's disappointed, and she seems so genuinely insecure just because she got like 2 inches shorter and now is a brunette. And it's partly adorable and partly really sad. I think it's actually a really interesting portrayal of the psychology of somebody who has this enhanced form like this. Like, unfortunately, Goku seems a lot less impressive in base now than he does in his Super Saiyan form, you know? And I think that would definitely be a big source of insecurity for somebody presenting to be bigger and greater and grander than you are, and actually knowing that truthfully all of this came from an external source. I really like that this portrayal takes that trope seriously and thinks about how it would logically impact that person and their psyche. It's a really refreshing breath of air to the genre as a whole. Oh, and like I said when she got introduced, Blonde Blazer has a very stupid name, and Blonde Blazer confirms that it's a stupid name because she's not Blonde Blazer. She's just regular Blazer. And she makes a great point that nobody ever meets her first. It's always Blazer first, always the superhero persona, so she feels like a downgrade from the expectations and the standards that she set in her superpowered form. In a way, it's kind of a play on Robert's own situation where he's learning to be Robert and not just Mechaman. The two aren't perfectly analogous because, nobody assumes that Robert actually is a giant 10-foot tall hulking robot person. But, the situations are sort of cousins, if not siblings. Robert asks her why she cares what he thinks, and she flinches back a little bit and won't say outright it's because she has a massive crush on him, but we know that's why. They shake hands, introducing themselves for the first time as people and not just as superheroes. And we learn that Blonde Blazer's name is actually Mandy. She invites us to a takeaway Italian meal fit for a king with plastic cutlery and red Solo cups, and some cheap-looking red wine and individually bagged fortune cookies. It's enough to make a grown man cry. And Blazer confirms that this very much is a date, joking that it's pure Michelin star stuff when it comes to her. And Robert gives her this cute little trivia story about how the Michelin star system actually comes from the tire company recommending restaurants further away from the towns so that new drivers would eventually need more tires, which is completely true. They have a little bit of a flirt and a little bit of banter. And God, these two just riff off each other perfectly. They have so much chemistry. Then, once again, my Lord and Savior Waterboy jumps in with a tactical chunder on the windows, just to really ignite the atmosphere of romance. They try calling out to him, but he doesn't seem to realize that he can go home, regardless of how many times they flag him and tell him to piss off. Blazer asks again if we're sure we don't mind the blonde, and Robert, like myself, a man of culture, specifically tells her that he actually prefers brunettes. Like, oh, I was actually on my way to come and tell you that I'd really like you to dye your hair. Something that I really would have liked to see here is a difference between the person that you picked to join the Z team showing up and seeing Blazer and Robert on a date. I thought that Waterboy showed up in this scene because I picked him. And I actually reloaded the game and went back, chose Phenomenan, went through the whole thing again in the hopes that maybe there was a world in which you could kiss Blazer and Phenomenan would see it. How good would that have been as a way to make your consequences matter? No such luck. And that's where we round out the end of episode 4 of Dispatch. Overall, again, like I said, this feels very strange to me that the game would dedicate so much of its runtime just to this very specific dating sim of really picking which of 2 5-minute scenes you want to see play out. Don't get me wrong, I think both storylines, if you want to call them that, are really individually strong, and I really enjoyed both of them, but I can't help but get hung up on the fact that I just don't think that this is the direction the game should be taking at this point. Can I point out that we've had no QuickTime events whatsoever for the last 3 episodes? 75% of this game, as it's out so far at episode 4, has been devoid of one of its key mechanics. We've had basically no progress with the Mechaman storyline, no progress with finding our father's killer. Everything about Robert's story has completely fallen to the wayside, and it really feels like the plot is stalling at the minute. I think this is definitely the best episode we've had so far in terms of the comedy writing and in terms of the character development, but it's still sacrificing too much of the plot, unfortunately. But, dear God, I've gone on about this for far too long. So let me just wrap up by saying thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you later.